we will jump right into the discussion. I'm just going to give you their names and titles. Michael Rossi, he's the Senior Director and acquisitions at Enterprise Community Partners. Courtney Elledge, is Courtney here? Did I see Courtney? Is she here, Brianna? Did she make it?
Is not.
Okay, Courtney isn't here. Okay. Kevin Sweeney is here though. He's the Vice President, First Independence Bank. Beverly Lloyd is the Managing Director of Lending at IFF. And my friend, Lucius Vassar, Senior Vice President, Detroit Market Leader at Sinair. Welcome, everybody.
Great to be here.
So glad to see all of you. I want to jump right into it. You know, one of the things that sort of stick out to me is, you know, this vocabulary around piecing together financial products, loans, capital stacks, all of that to make developments happen. For the new practitioner within the faith-based organization who is thinking about pursuing development, particularly development of housing, and want to know where to go, we are talking to banks and we are talking to CDFIs, community development financial institutions. And my first question is, what is the difference between a bank and a CDFI or community development financial institution? Michael, I'll punt to you first.
Well, I'm actually, I'm not with a bank. I'm on the equity side for Enterprise. I'm wondering if there's a lender or someone else who maybe wants to take that question.
Anybody want to take that? Just to ground the discussion and what the difference is.
Take that question, actually. Or I see Beverly unmuted too. So, yeah. Go ahead, Beverly, please.
Okay. And I've worked for banks and I've worked for CDFI banks, different category. And now I'm with a nonprofit CDFI. So the banking world are going to look for certain things when it comes to lending. You know, collateral loan to value is one of the biggest ones. And during the times when all the real estate values were down, it was very difficult for someone to get a loan because they didn't really have equity. Small businesses in particular. They also have other criteria, you know, personal guarantees from the owners, certain level of debt service coverage required, and, you know, that make it just a little bit more difficult to get funds from the bank. Most CDFIs have less stringent requirements, and most of them are focused on certain things. IFF is focused on lending to nonprofits. Some others may be focused on certain types of like multifamily projects, certain types of projects. And our underwriting criteria is not going to be quite as stiff. There are underwriting criteria though, because we want to know that if we put the money out there, that it will come back so we can redeploy it. But it's just not going to be nearly as stringent as what you would get from a bank.
Thank you. Thank you for grounding us in that point. I want to encourage everybody to go ahead and put their questions in the chat box. We will get to them. We're going to talk until about 2 o'clock, and the last 10 or 15 minutes or so, we will try to get to everyone's questions or comments. So go ahead and hit up the chat box. I want to talk to each of you about what it is that your institution does. What does your portfolio look like? What kind of projects have you worked on in the past, and what exactly are you looking for to work on now and in the future? Lucius, I'll punt to you.
Thank you, Orlando.
Yeah.
And I want to thank the conveners of this and all of the participants in this discussion. I'm going to set the table a little differently. We have a great panel, and as Beverly noted, she has experience in lending in a number of different backgrounds and capacities, and many of our other panelists also have extensive backgrounds with either banks or CDFIs. I'm a little different. I come at this as a member of a CDFI, community development financial institution, but as a person who has been throughout my career more of an advocate. I've been an attorney, I've been a lobbyist, I've worked in city government, I've worked in state government. So I really want to encourage you to do not be at all intimidated by these terms that are being thrown around and the technical nature of this. This is around the transaction, but you all as faith-based leaders have been involved in transactions that are much more difficult because you've been doing community and individual and family transformations. So walk in your power, recognize that you've been doing this work. You are the original community development organizations. You are the original community development finance institutions, particularly in the legacy and powerful history of the Black church. So start from there, walk in your power, get to know these terms, find you some people that will help you understand it and break it down, but recognize you've been doing this work. So for Senaire, we have been activated around a particular tool called the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit. That really was the start of our organization 25 years ago, 27 years ago, and we've grown to other types of community development. That is just a financial tool that really focuses on bringing equity, investment capital into affordable housing for our neighbors and folks who are at low to moderate incomes, right? I put in the link, the website for the CDFI Coalition, because there are various CDFIs that are active here in Detroit that do different things. We tend to focus on affordable housing. Some will focus on community facilities or community amenities that serve our communities. Some have other kind of focus areas. So get to know who's who and who's doing what. I also put my name, email address, and cell phone number in the chat, because one of the things that I left the practice of law to do was to really kind of break down these systems and these silos so that they were more accessible to people who are actually doing the impactful work. So if I can be a resource there, I might not be able to tell you everything about kind of lending and underwriting, but members of my team like Yolanda Bird, who's here in this group, can help you with that. What I can help you with is the connections, the relationships, activating your power within your network to get these deals done. If you can transform somebody's life who walked into your church, broken down, foreclosed upon by life, and turn them around to where they're now a deacon or perhaps even your pastor, you can definitely do it with a single family home or an abandoned building in your neighborhood. So walk in your power. We're here to be a resource for you.
Lucius came to preach, and I'm not mad at it. What a way to open it up. Kevin, I want to come to you in terms of, tell us a little bit about First Independence. What does the development portfolio look like? Where you got money, where you put money in, where do you want to put money now and in the future?
Yeah, thanks everyone for having me, and hopefully my contribution will be worthwhile. Well, I want to go back to what Beverly stated in terms of the difference between banks and CDFIs. We happen to be a CDFI and a bank. And one of the main differences is we are federally regulated. So all those bad things that Beverly said about loan to values and debt service coverage and everything, we have to adhere to that. And we get audited by the FDIC and the state and all those institutions. So we are constrained by some of the things that we can and can't do in terms of the CDFI and community development world. So our portfolio, we're a traditional bank. We primarily look to do projects within the city of Detroit, as well as the Tri-County area, but we are the Detroit's only minority-owned financial institution, bank rather. So we definitely have a focus in trying to help develop our community. We do projects anywhere from mixed use, commercial buildings, multifamily housing. We do have single family housing that we lend to. It doesn't come through my area in terms of commercial lending, but we do it. We're a full service bank. Our projects span the city. We do a lot of participations with some other CDFIs. I've worked with Beverly actually and Melinda at other institutions and LISC, Local Initiative Support Corporation. So we're all around the city, and we have an office on 7 Mile. Our main office is here on Woodward and East Grand Boulevard, and we're trying to attract business. Yeah.
I appreciate that, Kevin. Beverly, Kevin sort of teed you up to tell us a little bit about IFF, what's in your development portfolio, what's not that you want in there, and and the like.
All right. So IFF, as I said, is a nonprofit CDFI. We operate strictly in the Midwest. Our headquarters is in Chicago, which is where the largest part of our people are. But Detroit is the second largest market for IFF. So it's a big focus now on the Detroit area. We lend to nonprofits. So, nonprofits can be like CDCs that are doing community development projects. It could be early childhood education type operations with daycare and various other things like that. It's just a multitude of things. So most of our portfolio though is probably affordable housing as it goes throughout the Midwest. It's affordable housing is probably the biggest part of our existing loan portfolio. And we've done some in the Detroit market. So definitely looking to be able to do more of that in Detroit. Another focus is with the early childhood education. That is real big. We've done quite a bit of that in Detroit, and we'll probably be looking to do more. You see a lot of these facilities that, maybe operating out of the church basement or operating out of someone's house or various other things like that, where it's not the best, it's not as conducive to learning as it should be for that type of, and so we look to help them maybe improve the environment in which they operate. They may need, better lighting, better heating and ventilation. It can be some of everything to help, generate better learning. And so we do help with those types of things too. We also will go in and do feasibility studies for some nonprofits. So maybe you're operating in a building that you're leasing and you decide trying to figure out maybe whether you should buy that building or maybe where you should move someplace else to a building that's already more conducive to what you're doing. So we have a team that will come in and do a feasibility study and help you make those types of decisions. And then we also have a real estate solutions team that actually will do development. We're doing development now in Detroit that then will house early childhood education plus some human services and things like that within that development. So we're kind of a broad range of activities and a broad range of loan portfolio, but it's still mostly focused at helping nonprofits continue to do their work that they do. We provide the capital and then they provide the knowledge, the work itself within the communities.
Thank you. Let me follow up with something you said is specifically around the feasibility studies that you all help nonprofits to conduct, which are oftentimes really, really needed. Is that at no cost to the nonprofit?
No, there will be some cost, definitely, and I don't have a fee structure or anything like that, but you will find it is a lot less expensive than going to someone out, in the general market to get that done.
Thank you, Beverly. I want to come to Michael to talk to us a little bit about his role at Enterprise Community Partners and the portfolio that you're managing.
Thank you. Yes, I work with our Detroit office, Melinda and Brianna, and I am on our low-income housing tax credit syndication side. And I think yesterday, I think it was probably discussed about Enterprise's origin story and about the role of faith-based organizations in our origin. But Enterprise has been working in this space over 40 years and has been working with faith-based organizations that entire time. So in my role on the tax credit syndication side, I really appreciated Lucius's lead in because basically, if you're going to use a football analogy, when we're engaged in a potential investment, a faith-based organization may have been in that community for generations, and then they're working with the developer who's going to help them get to but basically they join about the 20-yard line, and then the last few yards, 5 yards, they're inside the first and goal. That's when you bring in your tax credit syndicator to finish out the capital stack and provide the equity for the development. and not every housing project or every housing organization wants to necessarily do a project using low-income housing tax credits, but it could be an important part of the capital stack as organizations are considering their options. Nationwide, Enterprise has a portfolio of about 1,000 deals in our current portfolio. We work in every state. We work in most major markets. And if in Michigan, if you're working with the state housing agency, MISTA, and you have an allocation of tax credits, then it's time to start having a discussion with the tax credit syndicator.
Thank you for that. I want to start at a very basic question, and that is, how can faith-based institutions prepare, and what does that preparation look like to approach a financial institution, a bank, or a CDFI? We talk a lot about, capital stacks, what's needed, pro formas, all of this vocabulary that may seem scary and foreign to some of these faith-based leaders who are endeavoring to do quality, affordable housing development. When should they call the bank or the CDFI? Kevin, I'll let you start.
Yeah, thank you. Slide. Unfortunately, I'm not able to see the slide.
I'm sorry, Kevin, to interrupt you. Is anybody else getting feedback from Kevin? Okay, I'm sorry. Kevin, you are breaking up really badly. Can you check your connection really quickly for me? But I'll ask Beverly to jump in and start while we figure out your connection issues.
And you want to know what they need to do before approaching us for capital? Okay. So, everybody's heard terminology, like you said. You got to have a business plan, you got to have forecast, and those things are true. It's just not, people don't always know what that's supposed to look like. So depending on what the project is, if you're looking to do affordable housing project because you have vacant land surrounding your church and you want to put up housing, one of the key things is going to be, do you have any experience in that? Or do you have someone that you're going to bring in, to manage that project? Because construction projects are, a lot of moving parts all the time. If you've never done it before, or you've only done it once in a small scale, you can run into a lot of issues. So that's part of it, is experience-based in whatever it is that you're trying to get financing for. And then also is how you're going to repay the loan. So you have to be able to do a forecast that says, here's the income I'm going to get in a certain period of time. Here are the expenses I have to pay, salaries, rent, whatever those things may be. And then here's what's going to be left over that I can use to make loan payments. So that's a big part of it. If it's a construction project, you got to have a budget for the project. If you're doing affordable housing, how many houses you're going to do? Are you doing rehabs of existing properties or building new on vacant land? Who's going to manage the project? How, you got to say, okay, here's what I've got to do to pay to purchase the properties. Then here's what has to be done, new electrical, new plumbing, whatever has to be done with each property and what that's going to cost. And so you have a very detailed budget that has those line items listed and the cost for each line item. And then also, if it's construction, you got to have a timeline. How long is it going to take you to build it? And what is that going to look like? When are you going to be able to bring properties into service where they're completely done and ready to move in? Are you selling? Are you renting those properties once they're done? So there's just a multitude of things that you have to bring. And it, once again, I said it depends on the project as far as what you need to bring. Depends on what you're trying to finance.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Lucius also wanted to add to that.
Go ahead, Lucius.
Yep, thank you both. So as I'm scanning the congregation, right, you look across Zoom and see who's in the room. There are a lot of folks that I recognize that I know have been doing this work and know these things. Some of the names that I don't recognize, I'm going to assume that you may be thinking about, where can I even get started to be able to think about doing all of this? So one of the resources that I also put in the chat is CDAD, the Community Development Advocates of Detroit. There are other groups like COACT, NEW, organizations that can help you if you're a nonprofit in getting your kind of financial house in order, if you will, to begin to put in place that solid foundation that you can build upon as you think about beginning to approach a bank or a CDFI. So that is a good example of kind of where you start. The other thing that I would offer is that finding a time to become a part of kind of the fellowship of folks that are doing this work, not only the faith-based CDO organizations, but the broader community development ecosystem, if you will, the different CDFIs, and building those relationships with people, because some CDFIs like Scenair have a development arm that can partner with communities to help them do certain development projects. Some CDFIs and some organizations like Enterprise have grants, Section 4 grants that can build your capacity, which I'm sure they've talked about over the course of these 2 days. But it all really begins on you kind of having relationships with folks where you get that information so that it is able to be broken down so you see where you can start and how you can build towards approaching financial institutions for support.
Lucius, can you say more about that partnership arm? One of the things that Beverly stated that sort of stuck out to me is financial institutions are looking for experience. Does experience in partnerships work, right? So if you have someone that's really just starting out and they have Scenair as a partner, does that help the application, number one? But how can faith-based new developers become partners with your development arm at Scenair?
Yes, it can, and that is the way in which we try to partner so that we are building the capacity, and perhaps for some of the more complicated types of developments like a low-income housing tax credit development, we can help get access to the competitive process, the credit allocation, so that you then can approach a syndicator for your project. I'll just be very transparent. That is a new kind of activity that Scenair is building. It's called Scenair Solutions. It was formerly Building Blocks. When Scenair started as an organization, we did not do that. Our relationships were more transactional. We were the equity provider. If you got the credit allocation and we're looking for somebody to quote unquote syndicate to bring you the equity capital for your project, we were there. Over time, we evolved and built closer relationships with community development, particularly in Detroit, where we did our first deal. So there are folks on this call like Linda Smith that have known Scenair going back to when we were the Great Lakes Capital Fund, and probably before that when we were the Michigan Fund for Affordable Housing. But the challenge that I saw is that the greatest tool is the hardest to get. The greatest tool that brings a significant amount of the development costs for a project to create affordable housing can be difficult for the community-based organization to access. So what Scenair Solutions is trying to do is to kind of bridge that gap, but also build the capacity of an organization so that they're able in the future after that first deal to maybe do other deals. So that is a way in which we're trying to respond to the need in the Detroit market and in a few other cities in our 9-state footprint.
Kevin, let's try to talk to you again. Hope your connection is strong again. So talk to us about what you're seeing in terms of loan requests or even, capacity building requests at First Independence. Love the mission, love that it's Black owned, love that you work in the biggest Black city in America.
Again, I don't know that I provided a lot.
Oh, Kevin.
Kevin, try to maybe stop your video and then see if that increases your bandwidth, and then try to speak and see what happens.
Kevin sounded like Roger Troutman.
Come on, Lucius.
Kevin, can you say something now, Kevin, please?
I'm talking, nothing.
Oh man.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but we're gonna have to come back. We're gonna have to come back to you. Listen, I want to encourage everybody to put questions and things in the chat. One of the things that is sort of sticking out to me in what Lucius is saying and what Beverly has said is the capacity, the bandwidth, the organizational readiness of these organizations. A lot of these orgs are 1 and 2 people in staff capacity. My question is around patient capital to help, not just, okay, I gotta make time and go to a meeting with CDAS so they can help me. Like, I want to learn that too, but is there patient capital to help these organizations sort of begin to build capacity, especially if it's a people shortage? I just need more hands on deck. Where do these organizations go to get that kind of help? Michael, Beverly, any thoughts on that?
We will provide pre-development funds in construction projects, which most banks will not do. And that's basically funds to get you started. You gotta go find an architect, put the plans together, get the plans approved by the city. There's all of these things that cost money that you have to do before you can turn any dirt, before you can start any project. There's all of these pre-development issues. And so we do fund some pre-development costs. But to your point about capacity, other thing is that, I mentioned we have a real estate solutions team. So we can provide a body or a couple of bodies to help you to get through those things. And you've never seen a business or a project planned or what have you before in your life, and you don't know what it is supposed to look like. So our real estate solution team will come in and help get you through that as well, with the hope that, once you're there, then my team, which does the lending, will then be ready to lend funds on that project. But so that's some of the ways that we get it done.
And this whole industry really is just based on its strength of partnerships. Partnerships are so important. And if you talk to Melinda in our Detroit office, Melinda has some resources for organizations as they're trying to increase their capacity for our Section 4 grant funding and other resources. And I think that, as I'm thinking back through my time at Enterprise and the deals I've worked on with.
Now, is Kevin going in and out?
Partnerships, and that comes from understanding who your local.
All right, Kevin, you're going in and out. So this is a faith-based call. I need the saints on here to pray about these connectivity issues.
Actually, it's Michael Orlando that's going in and out. So we have Kevin going in and out and Michael going in and
out. Wow. Okay, I want to talk about some of the barriers that you see that comes with faith-based organizations that prevents maybe your institution from being able to lend, being able to partner, so that that sort of hampers their ability to kind of move forward. And I know that a lot of faith-based organizations are doing amazing work, but are they filing their 990s on time? Do they have audited financials and things like that? Lucius, what are you seeing on the ground?
Yeah, that's definitely a little bit of what I've seen in my time with Sinair. And again, it is something that can be addressed. There are groups out here that will seek to help you kind of get your financial house in order. I think that as you think about the composition of your board, you should try to get as much strength as you can from your network or your congregation. So if you got folks within your circle that bring kind of, maybe you have a CPA that worships with you, maybe you have an attorney that worships with you, recruit those folks to be on your board so that they can help provide some of that foundational work to be able to present yourself to a lender. I want to kind of go back a little bit to points that both Kevin and Beverly raised that I don't want to be lost on the group. The banks are regulated, CDFIs are regulated. CDFIs, as Melinda noted in the comments, tend to be more mission driven, but we're still limited by, you know, the regulations around the CDFI certification. And the money that we get from institutional investors, banks typically, is driven by the Community Reinvestment Act. Without getting too technical, that is an act that was put in place out of recognition that banks historically have not served communities like Detroit, underserved communities as they call them. Some will say Black communities. They've not served them well. So now Congress had to pass a law, and as a matter of policy says, we're going to require you as organizations to reinvest capital into communities. One way they reinvest that capital is through a syndicator, which takes large chunks of that money that we raise in funds that are very complicated and regulated that can bring a lot of capital towards affordable housing. Other types of community and development that is recognized under the Community Reinvestment Act are the types of lending that we're talking about here today, but it's still regulated. A CDFI will also find sources to close that gap, to get philanthropic money that doesn't have the same regulations, other sources of funds that can make it more easy to access that capital to use for these types of developments. But it's all kind of really driven by government policy and heavily regulated. Understanding that a little bit will be helpful to you, so you understand why filing your 990 on time and accurately is important. Those are the things that we look to an organization, a nonprofit organization's capacity and their financial kind of wherewithal, if you will.
Thank you, Lucius. I want to put Melinda on the spot here because Mike is having some connection issues. And Melinda, you talked a little bit yesterday about it's all about the gap. And we're talking about partnerships and we're talking about closing, you know, capital stacks and getting development to the finish line. Talk about that gap, when, you know, that annoying gap that always exists, and why partnerships are important to getting developments done.
Thank you, Orlando. I get to put my lender hat back on. So putting it on, and thank you to our panelists, because I've actually worked with all of them before, trying to fill gaps in different projects. And really, it's about the gap because then we can actually get from cash flow from those projects. And so how do we, if you look at typical financing organizations, they want to manage risk. So they're not going to put 100% of the cost into the project. Instead, they may put up to 85% of the cost in a project. If it's a CDFI, they have some flexibility. If it's a bank, they are federally regulated. And so they have guidelines that they can lend up to. So if you still have, let's say 15% of your project that has not been financed, some of that might come from equity, right? We typically require at least a 10% equity infusion. Even if we use the 85% example, that then leaves us still with a 5% gap. How do you fill that gap? If it were me, I would call my friends at other CDFIs and banking institutions and say, I'm working on this transaction. We all have the same mission. Everyone here on this panel has the same mission. How do we increase affordable housing in the city of Detroit? And so I would call one of them and say, is this something that you'd be interested in? And whoever I call just depends on what their organization is interested in, right? Are they nonprofit only? Do they focus on for-profits? And so through that process, trying to put together a capital stack, that's sort of how you fill the loan. Perhaps one of them would be willing to fill a subordinate position. So then you have one of them may be able to tell you where you may be able to get a grant to fill a gap in a project. And so there are a lot of different resources that we try to use to fill those gaps. Sometimes those gaps are so very large that it takes years to try to figure out how to fill those gaps in projects. There could be changes in the general contractor, which changes the budget. There could be changing in pricing. We know the cost of materials rise. There could be a lot of different changes, maybe in the acquisition price. And so really trying to get with your partners to fill that gap is important. I would say, one of the questions you asked Orlando, when should you get an institution involved? The people on this panel are experts. And so I would say get them involved sooner rather than later, because they can actually give you guidance on what you might be able to do for your next steps. Maybe your project isn't ready yet. Maybe we say you need to talk to the planning department at the city, or you should talk to our friends over at this bank or this CDFI. They'll be able to help you. And additionally, one thing you touched on, there are a lot of nonprofits who help other nonprofits get their financial house in order so that they can approach lending institutions.
I want to stay here a little bit while we're on the subject of capital stacks and gaps. I want to talk about, paying down that debt service, and if these developments have to make money. Are lending institutions looking to see a profit? If they are, at what percentage? 7%, 10%, or more? So I'm going to put that out there openly and let any one of you respond to it. And then I see a question in the panel, in the chat that we'll get to.
I can start us.
Yeah.
We don't look for a profit. We look for you to be able to cover that loan of a certain percentage. And so lending banks typically want a 1.25 debt service coverage. And so that project actually can generate enough cash flow to have a 1.25 coverage, that extra 25%. So it's not one-to-one, so you have some cushion. Other CDFIs may look for something between 110 and 115, giving you some flexibility there. You never ever want it to be a 1-to-1 ratio. We're a nonprofit, and so we don't look for profits inside of our transactions. Instead, all we want to do is cover our costs.
Okay.
I echo what Melinda just said. Yeah, we're not looking for profit, and IFF lends to nonprofit organizations anyway. So it's all about cash flow and not profit. And so do you have the cash flow after you've covered your operating expenses? Do you have enough cash flow remaining to pay loan payments as they come due? And we look at a 1.1 usually, debt service coverage ratio.
Okay.
And
Go ahead.
Hopefully people can hear me now. Sorry about the technical stuff from last time, but from the equity side, the equity investor is seeking a return, but that return is not really in the form of cash. It's in the form of the benefit from the tax credits that they're getting, and then tax losses. So that's happening at the investment at the upper tier, our fund level. If you're doing a light tech transaction, the developer is going to see some economic benefit from that in the form of a developer fee and then cash flow from the property. And then there's the opportunity to refinance or do some other kind of capital engineering at the end of the compliance period, which happens about 15 years after closing. So there's benefits there. And the investor, at least through enterprise, the nonprofit syndication side, we're not looking to recoup a windfall at the end of the compliance period. We're looking to maintain the economics in the deal so that the deal can stay viable and functional for the extended use period, which is usually 30 years.
I appreciate that. I'm going to get in trouble because we're going over time, but there's a question in the chat around assistance and partnership with local universities. Do any of you partner or have relationships with universities that can help further some of these development aspirations on part of faith-based institutions? Lucius, I see you nodding your head. Yes.
Yes. Again, just, keeping it real. So I'm a Spartan, but there are other universities that are doing great work. And Melinda, I was about to give you a plug and give U of M some love because they're one of the institutions that's really got a great Detroit program and a number of resources here. U of D, through their planning departments and architecture, very active and engaged. Wayne State, Michigan State does also, but I'm encouraging my alma mater and trying to leverage it through my wife, who is a trustee, to encourage them to do more. So definitely those relationships can be beneficial because you get not only the academic perspective, the connection to an institution that has some resources, but also kind of mission-driven work that is coming out of the academy. So absolutely, those are good relationships to have, and they've been active in the city. All of the universities have been active in the city for a number of years in various ways. And with that also, Orlando, and to my panelists and everyone else, I unfortunately need to leave. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak with everyone and to share. And again, my information is in the chat. Here is a resource for you. Remain encouraged, and let's get this work done.
He preached, dropped the mic, and left. See you, Lucius.
Get that collection. I hit you up later.
I want to emphasize the partnerships with the universities, because oftentimes master level students have to do internships and capstones. And if your faith-based institution partners with the university, a lot of that pre-development work that needs to be done, a lot of that cleaning up, architectural renderings, drawings, performance, and all that can be done by students in a really amazing way and done with fidelity. I see another question about getting financial houses in order, but that question is to Jason Pelletier, who isn't a panelist, but I think he's on here. Jason
can get on our panel anytime he wants.
I'm putting him on the spot because that's my homie, but I hope he's, Jason, are you still with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Fantastic. I don't see the question.
So there was a question directed to you in the chat. I think you made a comment about making sure your financial house is in order, and someone in the audience asked you, what does that actually mean and look like?
So yeah, thank you for the question. Thank you for the shout out, Melinda. Thank you, Orlando. It's one of the biggest challenges we always run into from a banking perspective, or I always run into, I should say, is this idea of appropriate and accurate financial statements.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I talk about getting your financial house in order, I'm talking about, having the necessary financial statements that a lender, an investor, a syndicator is going to need in order to be able to properly analyze the viability and the sustainability of your organization, as well as that of any partner organizations you plan to bring into a particular deal. And so when I talk about getting your financial house in order, I'm simply talking about making sure that you have your recording down. And let's face it, without those financial statements, can you really understand how your organization is doing?
Mm.
Right? Do you really know where you are from a management perspective? And so I am always, from small businesses to houses of worship to anybody looking to interface, and I call it stepping up to big time. Particularly when you get into this development space, you got to have your financial house in order.
I appreciate you being a good sport, Jason. Listen, we are way over time. We have a breakout that we have to get into, and hopefully we can discuss a lot of the tenets that were brought to bear in this discussion a bit more closely and granularly in the breakout sessions. Thank you to Kevin. Kevin, we missed you, man. Michael, Melinda, Jason, Lucius, and Beverly. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh, and it looks like we're going into a 10-minute break. Am I taking us into break?
Yeah, so thank you, Orlando, and thank you, wonderful panel. Just like church, sometimes the message is going, just let them keep going, right? You know what I mean? So thank you so much for that dynamic conversation. I was thoroughly enjoying it. And of course, Orlando, thank you for facilitating awesome once again today. So thank you for all the energy. So yes, we're gonna go into a 10-minute break. Please don't go anywhere because that's going to be followed by a further breakdown of our assessment facilitated by Brianna. So Go ahead and get something to eat, stretch, take a quick little walk, but be back in 10 minutes. Thank you all. All right, welcome back. Hopefully everyone got an opportunity to stretch out a little bit, take a quick walk and get a quick bite to eat or maybe some water. So welcome back. And I will turn it over to Brianna to get us started with our survey and assessment. So thank you all for rejoining us.
Thanks, Michael. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you guys were able to take that 10-minute break and really, get something to eat or use the restroom. I want to first let you guys know who I am and what my job is currently at Enterprise. I'm the program officer for Enterprise's Detroit market. And what I really cover is Section 4 grants, which Mike Rossi talked about earlier, the CDO fund, our faith-based development initiative here today, that's what we're discussing, and a number of other things that come with the many hats that Melinda mentioned. But I wanted to tell you guys a little bit more about Section 4 before we get started on the survey and the assessment. So Section 4 is a grant opportunity through federal dollars from HUD. You have to be a nonprofit organization to be able to apply for Section 4 dollars. We're one of 3 major organizations that receive that type of money. And we usually give that out in 2 rounds throughout the year. They're used for operational support to build capacity for organizations who are nonprofits. So I just wanted to clear that up as we move into the next phases of the presentation. If you guys have any questions about Section 4 and the grant process, please reach out to me directly. I'll drop my information again in the chat for that. But moving forward,
can I ask you a quick question? When does Section 4 come out and how do you apply or find out about it?
So there is a request for proposals that is released on Enterprise's website. The last one happened around June. And then we recently made awards to those individuals before the end of last year. So they should be in their, how can I put it, their operating period for their grant. But usually, because of the pandemic, we've only done 1 cycle, but right now, the last one was released in June.
Great, thank you.
So for the church survey, I just wanted to mention this for anybody who is a part of their church's admin team who has been invited to come to this event today. We will be sending out a link to get some information from you all about a little bit about your, operational budgets and things like that. So that information will come out to you as a follow-up to this event. And then we would expect that back by April 14th. So if you're a part of any admin staff or church here today, this information would be very important for us. Next slide, Michael. And then I wanted to talk to you guys about the faith-based development assessment. If you can go on to the next slide. So our faith-based development assessment is really a helpful tool for you to look at everything that we discussed these last 2 days and say, hey, where is my organization in our process to do a project? Whether that means working with others, whether that means seeking other resources, or just figuring out if this is even something that you all should continue to pursue. If you want to go to the next slide. And so the purpose is really to work with faith-based organizations to explore what they would like to do with land stewardship, whether that means that's taking a lot and we just want to put a little pocket park there, or if that means, hey, we want to buy some land or we already have land in our possession that we would like to rehab for affordable housing. Next slide. So the content of this assessment. So I just want to let you guys know it's really a helpful tool for you all, but we want to actually get this assessment back from you all by April 14th. It really asks a lot of questions about how the project will flow and even some of the stuff that was talked about today with our CDFIs and our financial institutions. Next slide. There are 45 questions on this assessment. So I'm not asking you to do something I did not try myself. I don't believe in that. We went through every single question on the assessment And I would say most organizations will get to about 30 out of 45 questions before they start to ask themselves, okay, when should I approach a banker? When should I look for financial institutions for gap loans or a gap, financing? So I think that you guys should really take the time to walk through all 6 of the categories mentioned and really think about where your church or your organization is in its development journey. Next slide. Nope, you won't have the answers to all of them. I tried it. Doesn't work that way. But it's okay because you're not supposed to, right? Everything about doing development is about learning. Develop actually means to grow, right? And so we're growing in our knowledge of affordable housing. We're growing in our knowledge of how to better serve our community on a daily basis. So don't think that you have to have the answers. Next slide. And then, of course, everybody's going to be at different levels of expertise, right? Some people have never done development and they're here today for the first time. Some people may have done single family properties and they've only done 1 or 2. But that's okay, right? Because I know people want to do more. They want to, either do a multi-family unit and they've never done it before. Or they might just want to do some small single families and like clean up this whole block next to the church. And that's totally fine. But just make sure that you are okay with knowing that it's going to take a long time for you to become an expert in this field. Like everybody on this call is still learning on a daily basis about affordable housing. Next slide. So category breakdown. If you can change, yep, thanks. So just give you guys a quick overview of the different milestones within the assessment. I just wanted to talk to you guys about each one and then level them up to each other. So I look at it, I'm a planner as well, just like Michael Randall is. And I always look at things like a lasagna, right? You're gonna have different levels on every single piece of the lasagna and all of it mixed together to make a good meal, right? So with that being said, you have to look at it like, what is the vision of my organization and how are we actually going to do this project to make an impact in the neighborhood? Should we be doing this project? Or should somebody else be doing this project and we maybe partner with them? Like, is this really, really true to our mission? Enterprise, if we go back, would not even be here today if it wasn't really true to Jim Rouse's mission, right? As a person and who he is. So I think that it's important for you guys to analyze that and think about that as a church unit or organization that's in faith-based development. Preliminary site assessment. So it's always important to understand your site, right? Understand the property that you're going to either acquire or you already have in your possession. We talked yesterday about some of the things that might come up with that, meaning environmental issues. There might be something where you have to buy some land from the Detroit Land Bank or from the city. You have to look at the tax situation to see if it's economically feasible. If it's a structure already there, you might have to look at asbestos and lead. And is it in a historic district? What is it zoned? Does it make sense? So there is a whole different, ball game, but it adds to the fact that if you're picking a site, does it make sense for your organization and does it match what you all are trying to accomplish? The next thing is be true to the fact that you might need a partner, right? Especially if you're just getting started and you're a beginner. Everybody wants to come out the bat swinging, but unfortunately, sometimes we have to get our feet wet first before we jump in and actually swim. So I feel like at the end of the day, you should talk to people who have done development before. And that's kind of why we had those conversations yesterday with some of the other faith-based organizations to really dive into how did they get started? What was their process like? What barriers did they face when doing their development project? And then, it might be helpful to maybe partner with them on your first project. So that way that you can get your feet wet in the game and understand the different pieces and players that come along with it. Also, this is a good option if you have some financial situations as a part of your organization's capital stack. Working with other organizations and partnering with them, you can figure out whether or not it's it's actually feasible for you to do a project. And then joint ventures agreements and considerations to that process. You have to think about, okay, what is that organization's mission? Do they align with our goals? Is it important for us to know what their financial situation is? Because sometimes people want to partner with folks and you just don't know what's going on in the back door. Sometimes you need to know so that you know what you're getting yourself into before you approach a lender and they say, we can't work with you because you have so-and-so a part of your plan and this is not going to work. So just keep all of that in mind. Also, just understand the roles and the responsibilities. So even after the development is actually built, right? Who's going to maintain it? Who's going to be taking out the trash or hiring a company to come, do the trash? Who's going to be responsible for the parking lot? Who's going to be responsible for the lights and gas? You have to ask these questions. And you don't want to get too far into a project and people are not aware of who is responsible for what. And then also the pre-development resources. So Beverly and others talked about this a little bit as well. There's going to be some money up front that you need to actually do this project, right? You're going to have to ask folks about doing, renderings or drawings of your project. You're going to ask them about doing a pro forma, looking at, okay, if I only rehab the first 2 floors and then do the third one later, what is that going to look like? Should we have to put the elevator in? How much is that going to cost? How much can we charge for rent? All of these different things are going to be important and make sense before you approach a lender about your project. So you have to have your ducks in a row. There are some organizations out here that do provide services for that at a low fee. And we can, obviously connect you to those. And there are some that are, maybe a part of these calls today. But I think that it's very, very important to do all of your research before you start your assessment, and also make sure that this makes sense for your organization and the project is going to really impact the community. Next slide. So yeah, that's pretty much it about the assessment. Like I said, if you have any questions, reach out to me, Michael, or Mitzi. And we would like you guys to return the assessment to us by April 14th. We want to know what you guys are doing and what stages of your development process you are in right now. Maybe there's a way the enterprise can help you. Maybe we could connect you to someone who can best help you in a certain part of that journey. Thank you.
All right, so now this is the fun part. We're gonna have a dynamic breakout session that's gonna be led by AHA and ECP staff. So we have Stacy from Enterprise, of course, Brianna from Enterprise. We have Christian, Executive Director of American Heart Association, myself, and then Mitzi Cardona as well. So we're going to take a quick 3-minute break so I can sort out the breakout sessions, and then we'll get started. So please don't go anywhere. As a matter of fact, it may take less than 3 minutes, but I'm going to sort everyone into the breakout session. And once you're in your room, your facilitator will go ahead and get started with the questions. So thank you all. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and break us up. And then room 6, I'll join your room. So, okay, we'll see you all. Let me make sure we have.
Mike, I'm texting you.
Okay. Should I wait until I receive your text before we break out?
Yep.
Okay, I'll start the music. Okay. All right, we're good. All right, we'll see you all in 30. Thank you all.
Okay. Hey, everybody.
Hello.
All right. I think it's one person that is not. Give me 1 second. Okay. So, how is everybody doing today? Did you guys enjoy the conversation so far?
Yes, I am doing well, and I am thoroughly enjoying the conversations, the questions, the comments, and all of the information. It's a lot to take in just 2 sessions, but I am enjoying being a part of the session, the workshop.
Okay. Matter of fact, let's just go around and do an introduction of everybody in the room. I'll go first. I'm Brianna Mason. I am the program officer for Enterprise Community Partners.
Good afternoon. My name is Carl Williams. I'm the executive director of Highland Park Community Development Corporation.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Cleo Bradley with Detroit Catholic Pastoral Alliance.
And my name is Christy Laster. I wear a couple hats. I am a senior community liaison at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, managing programming and a faith-based initiative there. And I am also more like an administrative director at Greater Pentecostal Temple Church on the east side of Detroit.
It's nice to meet everybody. Okay, so I'm about to get ready to ask you guys some questions just to generate the conversation. Just give me a moment. Just pulling them up. Okay. So do you feel like the workshop has been beneficial, and did you learn anything new?
For me, it was beneficial. I learned that there's a few more people that's doing this work that I will contact in the near future. So it's been a great networking part for me. So
I would agree that it is absolutely a great networking opportunity. I've collected information or contact information from some of the people that have been on the line. And then for us, we're kind of in like that beginning stage. We haven't done any development at all. So it has been great to know that there are all of these resources out there that can assist us through this process as we learn and make some final decisions about, what we're going to do and start planning and all of that. So it's been very helpful.
yes.
Definitely. Carl, did you want to mention anything or?
Yes, I'm excited to be here. I've been
Your signal's going in and out.
Can you hear me? Can you hear now?
Yep, I can hear you.
Hello? Yes,
can-
I said I came in a little late, but I was looking forward to meeting everyone that I can in this circle of development. And we look forward to working with you guys in the near future. It's been very
Definitely.
informative so far.
Okay. And so have you guys done any like development before? Like I know Christy said you guys are still, in the beginning stages and learning, and figuring out what you guys want to do. Carl, have you all done anything? I know Cleo, I know from working with John Thorne, that you guys have done some development.
I've done development. I've been doing development actually since before the first crash in 2007. I had rehabbed a 8-unit apartment building, a gut rehab. And since then, I've got several projects. I've got one in the hopper now, my second appliance store. It's in Detroit.
Okay.
Our passion is housing. Our passion is housing. So we're just looking.
Okay, you going in and out again. But I get it. Definitely that the passion is housing. You guys have done some development in the past. So that's good to know because we have people from all different levels here, that are trying to do development, and we want to make sure that we're being as helpful as possible to everybody here. Have any of you guys like worked with consultants before, or have you found that helpful to like figure out like, let me talk to somebody first before I start doing this and seeing how much it's really going to cost before I get in over my head? Or was it one of those things where you just kind of fell in head first and figured it out as you went,
Well, for us, Brianna, it was basically starting off with single family rehab. Start off with one house and try to come up with a budget. Get a good relationship with the contractors. Find money to do the rehab, and you do one, then you leapfrog to the next one. Then it gets easier as you go, and like we've been doing it for about 25 years. So if you're first starting off, give yourself a break, get through those first year for that first project, see where you're on in the next 5 years and take it from there. But it's a process. But I would say start off small, it's a manageable project, and you should be okay.
Okay. I think that that's important and that's key. I think a lot of times, like just dealing with a lot of different groups, because I used to be a planner for the city of Detroit. So in my past life, my boyfriend is still a planner, but because we have children, we were like, let's just go ahead and, separate that. I would say that I worked with a lot of groups during my time period of working at the city where there was a lot of faith-based organizations who came and said, hey, I want to do a project. They just didn't know how, right? They were like, we did single family. Like they would literally take us through the neighborhood and point to the 5 houses they did on the block next to the church. But when it came down to like accessing city finances and, going through all the loops and the hoops, I would say that's where all the stuff happened, where they were like, okay, the city process just not working for me. In some places, it has cleared up, like they have this new design review process that's like fairly new, I would say last year or so. But I think that, a lot of people, have been burned in different ways by trying to get through processes and not having help and not having helpful, conversations with people who have the money, and so I think that in itself speaks to why we need to have more conversations like this with financial lenders and stuff like that, and figuring out ways where, okay, if I don't have it now, how can I prepare myself for that next step? Like we were doing single family, how do we get into the multifamily realm? Who else am I going to need to talk to? And are there other organizations such as yours, Cleo, that have already worked with financial lenders before and understand how that works, you know?
Yeah, and you kind of laid it out in your last talk. You talked about having a vision, creating that development team. You have to try to see how you're going to be organized, either 501c3 or LLC. That's very important. Getting your financial books in order. Then once you do that, if you do 1 or 2 rehabs, and the city would take a look at your organization, then maybe you can apply for some block grant money, maybe some city homes, and maybe even apply for some county or state money. But you got to get your house in order. You got to be organized. You got to have a specific task and goal. If it's housing, oriented, get your community involved and so forth. So then once you start that first house and that second house, then you have some type of track record you can take to the city and say, this is what we've done. We're organized. We have our finances together, and we need some money from you, and there's a lot of CDFIs today that will give you money. 25 years ago, we didn't have any CDFIs. I do believe, I do remember Great Lakes Capital, but they were basically doing low-income housing tax credits, being syndicators for Great Lakes Capital, and now they're Sonera. So, but yeah, that's a good way to start. But Brianna, you laid it out perfectly early, so that was a good presentation.
Thank you. And yeah, I think that's the most important part, because it's like people just genuinely need to know. I think that there's so many, like Melinda has said before, there's like a church almost on every corner in Detroit, and they all own some property. Either it's the parking lot or it's the lot across the street or whatever. And if people want to do stuff, they definitely do, especially since all this stuff is happening in the city now, proposal in and all this other stuff. They want to make sure that they have a stake in their neighborhood and they're able to actually help the community that they've been serving all this time, right? And I think that if we figure out ways to better bring the information to everybody, that to me will be able to put them ahead of the game before that big developer comes in and do a project and they don't get the chance to really have an impact in their neighborhood,
Another reason that I really appreciate being a part of these conversations is because just the other day, my husband had gone outside of the church and there was someone walking around a property by the church. It's been empty for some time. And it was a lady that lived in California. Her girlfriend called her and said, hey, they're giving away houses in Detroit. And she purchased the home for $3,000. And now is working with the contractors and working with the city on her plan to fix up this home. Around the home is 3 vacant lots. And it was very frustrating, to say the least. And I'm like, this should have been our property. So I am like right here with you all when you talk about just getting your house in order, just from a financial perspective, because we have the money to do so. We could have bought that home, but now that she owns the home, she's going to have the opportunity to purchase the adjacent lots next to it. And so this whole thing is just raising a lot of conversation, a lot of questions, and I feel a sense of urgency. I understand that there's you have to have a plan in place and all of that, but I really do feel a sense of urgency. So I appreciate the conversation even yesterday, talking about becoming a community partner. I had received the information through email not long ago, and I actually put my daughter to work. I'm like, you need to go on there. I'm working for Blue Cross and on conference calls and doing all these other things. And I'm like, go on there and I'll feed you the information to put on there. We need to become a community partner. We need to start somewhere. So I'm with you. I don't know if it's Mr. Cleophas or Reverend Cleophas. I don't mean any disrespect, but I'm with you on that. Starting somewhere, starting small, and then just really doing it so that others from California or wherever, they won't be able to jump in there and obtain what either the neighborhood residents should have or what the organizations that have been doing the work in the neighborhood should in fact have.
Yeah, and Christy, I don't want to assume that you knew that land is king, acquisition is king. None of this is possible if you don't have the land.
Absolutely.
Go out and get the land. And I know how you feel when you miss opportunity to get some land that's in your area,
Yeah,
you know, that you really wanted, that you can make a difference with. You know, it's very painful, but acquisition is the key.
absolutely.
And there's a lot of the land bank, the Detroit Building Authority has a lot of commercial properties. Uh, yeah, I would research all those organizations to try to get property. And
Mhm.
please make relationships with the city of Detroit. You may not, you may have a lot of hurdles and hoops to jump through with the city, but please make relationships. Jason Friedman yesterday, he's a great resource if you're on the east side of Detroit. Or if he's not, he would direct you to somebody, contact with the city of Detroit that will help you through this development process. So please
No,
make relationships with the
Hello,
city.
everyone. I am Daquan Allen. I just want to get a chance to introduce myself. Had to step away from my computer for a second. But basically, I am Daquan Allen. I'm a city planner in the city of Flint.
Okay.
And Michael Random have invited me to this meeting to pretty much listen in. He was looking to do some of these ideas probably in the city of Flint. So I'm just trying to get a feel for, sorry, I'm just trying to get a feel for everything. And, so far I've been collecting a lot of information. I'm dealing with some other things. We have a tight deadline where we're helping out some residents, organizations, and they are submitting grants, and today is the deadline. So I keep getting phone calls. So I have to step away from my computer. So I'm like kind of in and out, but hopefully I can get the recording so I can tighten up my notes.
Definitely, Daquan. Thank you. And like I was mentioning earlier, I used to be a planner too for the city of Detroit, so I understand. Sometimes you gotta drop some stuff, you gotta pick some stuff up. The house might be burning down behind you. You gotta make it work. So I definitely understand that. And then also too, this is definitely needed, not just in Detroit, right? Like we need like this happening across Michigan. There's so many different churches, so many different neighborhoods. Flint. We talked to Pontiac before. We talked to some folks over in Highland Park. It's important. It's important that this is shared information. And even though we might not focus in all those different areas, like in terms of regions of where enterprise operates, we're trying to get there, right? We're a very new office. We only got 4 staff members, but hopefully we will be able to expand our work in different neighborhoods. We're starting to build those conversations and relationships now.
Oh yeah, thanks for sharing that. I guess you understand from a planner perspective too. Like you said, it's a lot be going on sometimes. I'm just juggling a lot, and I'm just listening in. But I hope we can get this also rolling out in Flint. Like you said, it is very needed throughout Michigan. And some other places probably outside of Michigan that need it also. And I'm just looking forward to work with you guys.
Thank you. What would you guys think would be very beneficial or helpful for us to move this conversation forward? Like, what do you feel like is the next step for us to really make an impact in this conversation? Because we can provide resources all day, but if we're not talking about action, it's going to fall on deaf ears eventually.
I think, can you hear me?
Mhm.
I think you might need to, I hate to say the word survey, but you might have to take a survey on what all the faith-based groups, especially the newer ones coming in, what type of project they're trying to get accomplished. Is it single family? Is it multifamily? Is it just neighborhood beautification or something like that? Then maybe if you got a more people looking at single family, then maybe try to get more information around single family development. And if it's multifamily, try to get a lot of information around multifamily development, or have a certain workshop for that or something like that. I think that'll be helpful.
Do you think that that information will be gained through the assessment that you want us to turn in?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, I think that it will be, because that's one of the questions that we ask is like, okay, what is your project, right? What are you trying to work on? Do you guys have site control? Do you need to purchase it from somebody, and from who? Is it private, or is the city own it, or who owns it? I think that if people actually take the time, I don't know if everybody will, but if people actually take the time to do it and return it to us on the 14th, which will be great, we could eventually look at that and say, okay, well, maybe we need to have some workshops. Like, for example, Jason was talking about CDBG and home dollars and stuff like that yesterday. Well, if people don't know what that is or don't know how to access it, how are they going to be able to apply for it? Maybe we need to have some workshops, you know what I'm saying, where we invite people to come and they actually learn this information. Or maybe it is, you know, we work with, like the same way we work with the CDOs or community development organizations and have conversations about technical assistance and building capacity and things that they may need coming up. Maybe we need to have those conversations with some of these faith organizations that, you know, are really trying to do these projects, but don't have the bandwidth, or they want to hire a real estate person, but do they really need to, or should they work with somebody else that already has one on staff? You know, so I think that what you're saying is spot on. I hope that the assessment is filled out and we can get it back.
I have a question. Do you know if all the faith-based attendees today have a target area that they want to do work in? If not, if you can identify that target area and maybe have some type of map. What I'm getting at is in the future, we'd have to partner. People need to know what people are doing and who they can partner with and what they're doing. And that could be helpful too, moving forward.
Definitely. I think that, so in my experience working at the city, right, it was frowned upon to create maps of people's projects or project areas, because if it somehow ends up in the wrong hands, such as somebody who's from California that don't live here, that want to do something, they might use it to you know, pick certain things so they can buy up that land before that person does the project. You know what I'm saying? So I think that if it's in the right hands with the right people, yes, but it just can't end up in the hands of a speculator. I think that the best thing would be, hey, we know these 10 organizations in this little geography right here are doing projects. I'm gonna just get all of them on the call together and let them know what's going on, versus, you know, putting something out there that might slip into the wrong hands, you know? And I've done that before in my previous work.
Makes sense. That makes sense.
I had like 3 churches. I'm sorry, Christy.
No, I was just saying that makes sense to do, because in consideration of those that are on this particular workshop, I mean, it's not even 1% of all the faith-based churches that want to do some type of work. And then I was going to say, to add to what Cleo was saying, some of the responsibility is also on the ministry to assess who they have in the congregation that have the skill sets to do a lot of what needs to be done. Like you talk about a real estate person, or we talked about earlier, a CPA within the congregation. There's a lot of people in the congregation that have skill sets that can help further along the process, but it's up to the ministry to kind of do that internal assessment too, so that they can build a good team to work with enterprise or whatever development organization they end up partnering with.
Yeah, and Christy, that's a good point. And if you're a church that goes out in the community, you'd be surprised how many assets you have in the community, what people can do and what people are doing. So that's a good point.
Yeah, I just wanted to share very quickly. Basically, the work that I've been doing in the city of Flint, I think it may be similar to some of the work that's going on in Detroit. Basically, what we have been doing is we've been having different neighborhood groups pretty much gather together, and we want to basically give them the chance to apply for different grants, and when we help them do like a neighborhood planning. So we have them identify like boundaries, and then they pretty much select you know, all the problems, and we identify all the problems and try to address it. Basically, like a problem and asset mapping is what we do. And by them having that problem and asset map, they take that and then they utilize that and they continue to apply for grants. With Michael Randall, he's been working with us throughout one of our neighborhood plan processes. He was just basically just being involved, you know, listening in on it. And you know, due to COVID, we lost communication. And now that we finally you know, reconnected, he presented this idea to me, and it's this church that I've been watching for some time, and we have helped them in the past with our neighborhood plan, but we haven't figured out exactly how to work with them. And then Michael presented this faith-based initiative which pretty much aligns exactly with our plans, and it sounds like it's designed with, aligns with American Heart Association. So basically, this church have been extremely active in purchasing a lot of land. They own like almost a block or two, and I think this program may fit like right in place, basically. And like I said, I'm excited to see what we can do out of this, and connecting them with American Heart and whatever else may come with this. I'm not exactly sure. I guess we're in the beginning stages. I don't know too much about development, but I know much about planning.
Same. I was like that before I came to enterprise. I was like, not on the development side, I was on the planning side, but all this go together.
Right.
And I have a story to tell. Just listen to Dequan. I'm going to say back in 2005, it was several churches. They were doing separate projects, and they were using the same consultant to submit a tax credit to the state of Michigan on a certain day. It had to be April 1st or October 1st, one of the days. This tax consultant didn't make it up to Mr. Lansing in time to submit the applications. It was like 5 churches.
Wow.
So he just missed out. So what happened? The churches got together and went and talked to Governor Granholm at the time. And she said, if you 5 churches would partner together, I would set aside some money for you to do one project. You got to decide where you're going to put this project, but you got to come together, organize a group, and we'll make it happen. But sad to say, it took 2 years. It got to a point where the leadership kind of fell off, and the tax credit amounts kind of fell. The amount that you can get per dollar for tax credit. So it didn't pan out, but it was a great thought. We had several big churches in the city of Detroit meeting once a month, trying to do a development. It took them a while to figure out where the development is going to go, because every church wanted to go in their neighborhood. So, but I'm just saying, maybe that's maybe partnering, a couple of churches getting together, partnering. I don't know. That's power in a couple of churches get partnering, and trying to do a project.
I think that's an absolutely amazing idea. Oftentimes when you try to get several churches to come together, like you were saying, it took them a bit of time to determine where to place the development. The only thing I would see with that is that you oftentimes have too many chiefs, and yeah, so that would be the only thing with that. But that would be like a great idea for a couple organizations to come together. And I think it was talked about on the workshop here, either today or yesterday. Sometimes you need a partner to go in with you to make it happen. If we had more people with that mentality, we could do so much more.
And how powerful is 3 churches coming down to the city of Detroit asking for some home dollars? That's powerful. So. Yep.
I agree. And I think that people need to know that. I think, honestly, we need to have more conversations about partnerships and collaborations. I know people have been burned in the past by whoever and whatever organization, but I think that people need to understand that things work better in numbers. And then also, too, each organization has its own strengths, right? So if y'all are really good at housing development, right, and we're really good at land activity, like doing programs in the lots and block parties and all this and that, y'all can buy up this block, rehab the houses, do something nice for the community, and still have a lot of community engagement that's happening around the church. That means more people coming to the churches. That means more people bringing money to the churches and tithing. You know what I'm saying? It all ties back into the whole ecosystem of community, right? And I think that people lose sight of that because they be like, I just want to do this project on my own and get the accolades. And it's not about the accolades if it's about the community. You got to do what's best for you to make the project work,
Did we talk about yesterday or today about the city's role in housing development and how the 5 target areas are very important where the city placed their money when it comes to housing development? Any home dollars that come to the city and block grant money, if you're trying to do housing development, you have to be in one of those target areas. Your project has to be or if your project scores high, if you're looking for tax credits, it has to score high on the QAP. And a lot of places in the city, they don't score high on that QAP. So
Mhm.
be what I'm trying to get at, be mindful of where you select your target area. That's why it's so important to get the city involved early on, because
Yeah.
they'll let you know if we want to fund that, they're going to fund it. If not, they're not going to fund it. It's just
Mhm.
not
I'm
going to happen.
sorry, you said the QUAPP?
The QAP.
Oh,
Yes.
I'm sorry. What do that stand for?
The Qualified Allocation Plan is for the state of Michigan's low income housing tax credit funding.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah. So light tech deals, which we talked about a little bit earlier. So
I have a
it's like a
question about that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
I'm
Christy.
sorry, Brianna.
Oh no, you're fine. I was just gonna explain it a little bit more.
While you're explaining, can you include this as the 5 areas? Is that included among the 7 neighborhoods that the organizations worked with the larger companies to fund through the strategic neighborhood fund and all of that?
I'm
Is that all
sorry.
tied
It's
together?
7 neighborhoods instead of 5. It's 7 neighborhoods.
So I can give y'all a little background about that too first, because that's used to be my job, right? So I used to work as a planner in the planning department on strategic neighborhood planning. What that was there were 7 neighborhoods that were chosen based on a number of different factors. One being, housing density, like, where are people living? Are these houses still occupied? Do they have some strong retail corridors? Some don't, some do. Where's the money flowing out of these neighborhoods? And so those 7 neighborhoods were chosen. And from there, they were giving money for capital projects, meaning streetscapes, housing, retail, and then was supposed to be parks and like open space. So they got park renovation, some streets cleanups, and maybe streetscape, like Livernois 6 Mile, like they did that stretch. And then they, funneled some money into some businesses. That was cool for a while, but what happened is it wasn't, attacking those other neighborhoods that need the help, right? And so there was a lot of people saying, okay, y'all did those 7, but what about mine? I'm approaching the funders for this, I'm approaching the funders for that, and I can't get any money because they funneling the money into these neighborhoods. So it's just been a whole situation where now that the proposal in is happening and stuff like that, they're looking at how do you branch away from that, because the 7 neighborhoods have already been planned, like they've already gone through their planning efforts, or they're wrapping up their planning efforts at this time. And so now how do we approach that going forward and make sure it's more equitable, making sure more neighborhoods are touched? And even if that means, like, I explained it when Arthur Jemison was there. I explained it as if there was tools in a toolkit, and every neighborhood needs different tools, right? So you might have to pull out that screwdriver and that monkey wrench for this neighborhood, but you might need to pull out that hammer for another. You know what I'm saying? So I think that what they're trying to do is figure out what that looks like, whether that means, okay, we're gonna knock down these houses over here, we're gonna rehab some, or we're gonna dump some money into the retail corridor because there's still some businesses there. It's just 1 or 2 vacancies right there. They're just trying to figure that out. What that does though is, when in the past, when people would come to the city for money or to fill that gap with light tech funds, or to get some money or assistance with tax credits and other things like brownfield and whatever, they were having some issues with the city supporting them on those projects because they weren't in those neighborhoods. So that's what that kind of conversation comes up at, is like, you have to really talk to the city about what are your focuses, where are your primary areas that you're trying to support. Our project is in XY area, or is right outside of XY area, because that also is helpful too. Like, you might be 2 blocks outside of the boundary, you might want to have that conversation, but neither here nor there. Just having those conversations are helpful, so you can know what their priorities are, what your priorities are, or maybe you're a little bit down the line. They're like, okay, we're not touching you this year, but maybe 2 years from now, we're going to do this area. We want to be prepared for your project. Maybe you need a little bit of help now. We're going to help you with getting connected to somebody to help you with your performance, or help you with the renderings for your building. So that way you're ready and prepared when it's time for that money to flow to that neighborhood. So I would say that. And then in terms of enterprise, we support 4% and 9% LIHTC deals with our loan fund. And so, you know, Melinda knows a little bit more about that because I'm not a money person, but essentially we try to help fill that gap. And what she was saying yesterday with duct tape and super glue. Sometimes you got to make it work. So, you know, that's what we try to do at Enterprise.
So our church is on the east side of Detroit. It's in one of the 7 neighborhoods, the East Warren corridor. So I have two hats. My one hat is where I worship, and then my other hat is Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. So the East Warren corridor is our neighborhood, and then I'm the community liaison. So I'm not necessarily involved in the planning, but I've gone to some of the planning meetings. So about a week or 2 ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we finally had a meeting where we kind of wrote things out and kind of talked about what is going to happen. And you have the community that have their say, and we won't get into that part of it, but I am happy that our church is in one of the neighborhoods that Detroit is focusing on. But one of the, I guess, concerns is that because now everyone knows that this is an area of focus, people are like, give me those properties, give me that land, let me get. So it behooves us to just really get on top of it and start to acquire the land that we need so that we can do our part to help and support the community. And then we've been working on those relationships with the community. When we initially moved to this location from Alta Road to this site on Warren, it was a bit of a challenge. There were a lot of complaints that were coming from the neighborhood that we just didn't know of. And the complaints were because the neighborhood was dumping trash in our alley. So we've kind of worked through that and worked to develop some good relationships within the community. So I'm just glad that it's in one of the 7. And so we're just going to try to do our part so all of this is tying into all of that.
Oh, definitely. And I will say this too. I actually live in that neighborhood. So I just moved here. I just bought a house.
What street?
3 Mile.
I grew up on 3 Mile Drive. I lived over there for 25 years.
Really?
I sure did. My house has been torn down, and for the last like 3 weeks, it's really been like heavy on my heart to purchase the land where my home was. My aunt still lives on that street. She's a part of the block club and all of that.
I need to get a part of the block club. You can send me some information.
Yeah, so I go to like the neighborhood meetings for all 3 neighborhoods, for East English Village, for Cornerstone, and for Morningside, which is where 3 Mile Drive is. So yeah, our church is right on the corner of Haverhill and East Warren.
No, that's totally perfect. I think that we need to definitely talk after this so I can connect with you. I think that, no, that's the good thing too about 3 Mile. So when I was working on the Russell Woods plan, that was the plan I was responsible for. I told people straight up first meeting, these are all the properties that are available from the land bank right now. You need to hop on it. Because, you know, by the end of this plan, somebody and their mama didn't talk to whoever, and now all these properties are going to be gone. And sure enough, when I started off the plan, it was probably like 60 properties in Russell Woods that were available. By the end of it, it was like maybe like 12. Because people had bought, you know? And so it's like, you know, people are like, well, I ain't know nothing about it. No, I showed you all these pictures in the presentation. I handed you handouts of all the properties that were available. I had the land bank sitting right here at this table, you know, and I'm not saying they're the easiest people to work with, but I'm just saying.
Brianna's my new best friend.
I'm like, look, we need to have these conversations. So Alan, you know, Alan Penniman is the planner for East Warren Casual. So I will definitely, like, if y'all want to have a one-on-one conversation, that'd be good. Maybe he could tell you more about some of the properties or connection with people that know about the properties that are available so that you can go ahead and just go ahead and acquire before, you know, people start finding out about the streetscape. And
Alan did the presentation a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
I missed it. I was in the middle of moving. I moved in the last week of February.
Yep. He did the presentation a couple weeks ago. So we've met a few times. I think I actually have his contact information. I'm very cautious on which hat I'm wearing. Like, am I Blue Cross today or am I a church kid today? So I kind of go back and forth.
Well, Christy, I have a comment when it comes to Blue Cross. I know Blue Cross, a couple of years ago, I was at a meeting and I met somebody who represented Blue Cross. And I think Blue Cross has recognized that decent, affordable housing attributes to your health and well-being. So they may have a program where they're helping with affordable housing. I don't know, maybe check within your organization to see if there's somebody that's doing that type of work, that's reaching out to communities to try to partner with them to do affordable housing.
Well, not that I am aware of, but I know that we have given $5 million to the Strategic Neighborhood Fund specifically for the East Warren corridor.
Okay.
And then we recognize that stability in housing is one of the social determinants of health. So we have our inclusion and diversity team, which kind of looks at all of that. And then we have my team, which is community responsibility. We're like the boots on the ground that stays connected with the community, just kind of understand what is it that they want, what do they like to see. And then specifically in the neighborhood that we're working in, I think we have about 60 employees. So we try to keep connected with those employees to inform them of what's going on. And we have a health clinic that's coming to the neighborhood as well, so that people will have additional access to a PCP. But again, that clinic, it's more focused on seniors, but there aren't many clinics in that area. So we have a few things that are happening as it relates to just helping to stabilize things and eliminate some of those barriers to health.
So, and you also mentioned about property acquisition again. Have you talked to the Detroit Building Authority to see what kind of commercial properties they have on that Warren Avenue strip where you are?
I have not. I have just been driving up and down, seeing the acquisition of several properties through the Warren, the East Warren Community Development Corporation. They have been helping a lot of businesses to obtain a lot of the properties over in that area, but we have not had those conversations. So we're kind of like in that beginning phase. So I had a talk with I know we got a couple minutes. I had a talk with our assistant pastor, which is my father and brother, but we're not talking about that. And we're planning to set up a meeting with the city. So I didn't know whether I should start with my district manager and council person and just kind of flow from there, or whether I should go directly to a different group within the city. Any advice on that?
Let me give you a contact number for the Detroit Building Authority. I would just call them directly.
Yeah, call DBA.
Yeah.
You ready for Felicia?
I am ready.
No, Tyler Tennessee.
Yeah. That's
224-1840.
Okay. Got it.
But to your question, I think if you want to shoot high, shoot for your council member is fine. Who's your council member? Is it Spivey or?
Spivey. Yeah, he's a minister as well.
Yeah, I would try to contact the staff, let them know what you're doing, then contact the district office, the District 4 office. I don't know who's the head of that now, but those are good places to start.
Rod Liggins now. It was Letty Azar, and then Dennis works closely. So we I have a relationship with both of them.
Okay.
And by all means, Jason.
Name for the 224 number, this one here?
Tyler Tennessee. Yep. Detroit Building Authority.
Okay. And he's very
happy. Handle all the city commercial properties.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we are in a very good position because our building, we paid it off a few years ago. So when we have 13 classrooms on one side of the school, it used to be Chandler Park Academy. So we're in a pretty decent position to get some stuff done.
Oh, have you ever thought about doing a child care center?
Yes, we've had a couple to come and check it out. Before Matrix took over. We had CDI to come and check it out, and they were very interested, but they didn't get the grant. And then Matrix has one that's not too far, so they didn't have capacity to open up an additional location. So we had a private organization to come out and look at the property. And there was just conversations about the work that it would take to get it to where the building to where it would need to be.
Right.
So we want to go back.
If you talk to IFF and see what it would take, or try to get a budget to see what it takes to develop that site, see what it takes for you to get a loan, and then talk about the tenants, then go back to Matrix and say, well, if we develop the site, how much can you give us a month for this square foot building that we have?
Okay.
And see what then that way you can use that lease, that's because they're going to give you a 5-year lease. You can use that 5-year lease and take it to IFF and say, I got a 5-year lease, they're going to pay me this amount a month. Can we get a loan, based on this lease? So
Oh wow. Okay.
yeah, it's
I'm on the line with the right.
because Matrix probably don't have the money to build it out for you.
Yeah.
They
Usually before they did, but I guess
yeah.
when they acquired it, it was so many sites. They started to shut down sites because they just couldn't manage it all.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, I think they're about to close up these breakout rooms. I think that this is a wonderful conversation. Daquan, I'm going to contact you offline. I'm gonna get your information from Michael so we can talk more. And Christy, I'm definitely gonna reach out to you because I want to get connected in this area. I've always been an East Sider, but I lived over there off of 7 Mile Out Drive before, so this is, a different neighborhood.
Yeah, sorry to hear that on 7 Mile Out Drive. Sorry to hear that.
Born and raised.
Okay, I look forward to talking with you more, Brianna. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I look forward to talking to you too.
All righty, bye.
Bye bye.
All right. Thank you guys for the breakout sessions. I feel like we had some fruitful conversations. I'm gonna turn it over to Mitzi so we can do our report out.
Absolutely. Man, I took like 3 pages of notes. I had an incredible team on that breakout session, and I'm sure that each of the breakout sessions were as informative and interactive as our session was. So I just want to start by saying thank you for joining our conference today and being so interactive and engaged within our breakout sessions. I know some of the questions and some of what we wanted to gather was this webinar 2-day conference benefit? How did it help align or make some of those connections with your project? And as you're moving forward in the planning and the development of that, where are you with that project, right? What are some areas that this workshop has been helpful? What are some of the areas that that you haven't had that experience, that you gained some of that new experience? I know we had a lot of conversation in my breakout session, and I can start with the report out, and then we can jump to either Brianna or Mike's workshop. I had an amazing, it was 3 of us in our breakout session, but Quincy provided so much insight and experience to our group. It was just awesome. So I know I have to be kind of quick, but there was some really good nuggets. I loved how he broke it down to Nathan, one of the participants that was on the call. He said, it's important that once you acquire that land, that you activate that land, that you activate that property, that you make sure that it's clean, that it looks inviting to that neighborhood, right? Activate it, clean it up, invite people, put some benches in there where people can feel comfortable. And if you're looking at a rehab of a house, make sure that you're engaging that community, that you're asking questions. What do you think? Learn the history of that neighborhood. I love that he said that. He walked us through. We're looking at Highland Park, and know the history, know what worked, what didn't work. Engage your community residents to be part of the process, because if you ask for their opinion, they're going to feel engaged. They're going to feel like they're part of the process, and it just works out best for all parties involved. He talked about, when you have a plan, I think one of the hardest barriers he said was really selling that plan. like, I believe in my plan. I know there's a purpose for it, but getting others to buy into that plan was one of the difficult, but he mentioned that partnering is key. Aligning that mission or that project initiative with people that not only believe in it, but that will support you through the process. They won't come and overtake your project, but they will help you fulfill your project and align and partner with you on that project. So really engaging the community residents, engaging your local government, he mentioned, and looking at ways that you can partner with people that already have experience in it. And I loved how he mentioned, it doesn't matter the size of your church. It could be a small church, it could be a big church. Knowing that you already are the expert, you're doing all this stuff in the community. It's just aligning with that right people. I loved how he mentioned, you have to partner with your CDFI and give them the plan, and they'll help bring those investors. They'll help sell your plan. So he mentioned Linda and Brianna and Enterprise have been key in that process with him and connecting him with the right people. Sorry, I know that was long-winded, but it was an awesome session. Thank you, Quincy.
That was perfect. Thank you, Mitzi. Sound like that was a great conversation. I'm pretty sure we all had great conversation. I certainly did. So I'll go ahead and report out next. Again, great conversation. I feel like I randomly put myself in an awesome group. I definitely was listening way more than I was talking, which my team knows that is very rare. So, Van, he's actually assistant pastor at his church, and he also works with Mr. He had a great thought about creating like site tours for lenders and developers, maybe some video tours to really highlight some of the projects that are going on throughout the city. And I felt like that was a great idea, thinking about some of the geographical barriers. Our city is geographically so large, and sometimes there might not be a lot of opportunities to highlight some of the great works that are going on in the neighborhoods. So maybe like a site tour with organizations like SNARE and Enterprise, so we can see what's going on in some of the pockets in the neighborhood and bring some of those projects to life. He said it's really, really important to have a good team. He said, we talk a lot about gifted people being in the ministry, but we need to equally have gifted individuals in development as well. So making sure that individuals are in the right spot in terms of your team. And that's really what's gonna drive the overall success. Linda, who was with you, Snap Back, hopped on and was able to, drop a lot of jewels. I couldn't type fast enough because she was just dropping them, left and right. So she said, one of the key things she said was working with your local bank. A lot of churches may have been banking with a particular bank for maybe 25 to 30 years. And the least they can do is have a conversation about some of their community reinvestment initiatives. And I use the word maybe demand a conversation. And I think that's maybe that's something that you could do, especially if you've been banking with an organization for many, many years and you've given them your service. These community reinvestment dollars are not out of the kindness of their heart. These are dollars that have been mandated federally. So just having that conversation with your local bank could go a long way. Of course, getting community input is really important. I like what she said about don't take a if they build it, they will come approach. Definitely being sensitive to the market needs and making sure that your development project is meeting a need. And also she highlighted the need to take this scope that we're taking in terms of, building a healthy community, right? It's really, really important. She talked about, in her early years of this work, they didn't really have a lot of conversation about health and housing, but she's really happy to see that Enterprise and AHA have came together to make this a reality and bring these conversations home. Donald also talked about his work. He's actually in Seattle right now. So Donald joins us from all the way in Seattle. which is really cool. He's a native Detroiter, and he talked about raising funds for pre-development opportunities for churches to really get their financial house in order, to be able to move towards a capital stack, and really make an incredible case for financial institutions to take them seriously. And he really loves what we're doing with enterprise and really taking a national approach to this. He really sees the need to continue this moving forward. And clearly him coming all the way from Seattle is a demarcation of that. So Donald, thanks for that. And Marilyn, when we talked about navigating through COVID-19, she really talked about the PPP loans that were able to be made available to churches. If churches were able to administer those funds correctly, it really put them in a great position to potentially look at affordable housing moving forward. So yeah, overall, a great conversation, packed with information. I'm definitely gonna keep my notes for myself because I was definitely learning a lot in my group. So thank you. And I guess I'll turn it over to Christian or Stacy if they want to report out. Christian?
Sure. Well, I had a dynamic group. We had some really robust conversations. I'm with Michael. I'm sure I did not capture all of the dialogue, but it was Caitlin, Jason, Felicia, and John. And we just, we talked about, one of the biggest conversations we had was about engaging the community prior to development. And I thought that was a great conversation because we haven't touched on too much of that, but John talked about how it was really a 8-year process for them, really talking to the community, building committees, really trying to figure out, what is it that the community wanted and needed, and really spending that time to really build those plans very deliberately to ensure that those projects were going to be beneficial, to the community. And so I thought that was key. And another piece of it was, going through a process like that, how does a small organization, I think you mentioned they have like 2 or 3 staff, do something like that, right? A big community engagement project like that. And so we talked about, partnering with other leaders. We talked about, LISC is a good partner and things of that nature where they might be able to help you with that technical support piece so that you can, work on that community engagement piece. He identified Linda Smith as a great person that they worked with on that project as well, who helped them to really, dig into that community and collaborate well. So I thought that was really key, and just, making sure that we're providing that kind of technical support to our partners to ensure that they're building something that's going to be, sustainable and valuable to that community in the long run. So that was a really big piece of our conversation. We also talked a little bit just about, barriers around gap financing. And, there were some questions around, where do you go? Like when you sort of, you've got the bulk of it, but maybe there's gaps, right? And one of the pieces was really making sure you're working with maybe even your city rep, and having those relationships with the person, at the city who's helping you work through that project, and how sometimes they can help you to identify, some additional things that might be able to close that gap there. And just felt like that was also another topic area that we should continue to double click on for our partners to really help them understand all the different layers of funding and how they can, make sure that they're getting everything that they need to bring that project to fruition. So those are 2 of the big things. I'm sure there were more, but it was just a really dynamic and robust conversation. Talked a lot about COVID and some of the stoppages that happened, at that point, but that things are starting to get back on track. So that's good news that, these projects that maybe had hit some roadblocks because of the year that we've had are starting to get back on track. So that was a good dynamic conversation as well. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Christian.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, team. That was a wonderful conversation. Thank you all for your for sharing so much. It was great.
Hey, so we had a good conversation as well. We kind of took it in 2 different directions. We had a lot of East Side folks and some Flint folks on the call. But long story short, what we discussed was that when it comes to the conversation we had yesterday about accessing different types of funding from the city and resources, sometimes you can get hung up because they're not in a strategic neighborhood. And so how do you, make those connections and try to find funding for your project or get, support for your project if they're not? So we talked about that a little bit. We talked about how just going and having those conversations, you might be a block out, or you might actually be in the area that's being covered and you just don't even know it. So it's important for that. We discussed also that, building up part, I'm sorry. We talked a little bit also about just building partnerships and connections with organizations, because you might start off with just like a single family project, and that's okay, right? Because it might take a little longer for you to get that financing for a multi-family project in your neighborhood, but also paying attention to what's happening with the strategic neighborhoods and other things that are going on, because people can be buying up the land around the church and you haven't had the opportunity to acquire it. So you want to make sure that you know who owns what. If there's anything going on that's like a strategic investment that's happening in your area, that you are putting your best foot forward, securing the land for the church or for your organization so that you can be able to do your project. And then I was in a chat with Cleo from Detroit Catholic Pastoral Alliance, and I was also in there with Christy, Carl, and Daquan from Flint.
Awesome. Man, these conversations were great. Thank you, Brianna, for that report out. Stacy, did you have anything to report out from your breakout?
Yeah. First things first, the group was really grateful for the last 2 days, and they had expressed a lot of value in attending. And so kudos to everyone who played a part in putting this on. One of the things that we had talked about in terms of follow-up was that just today is, or the last 2 days has been a lot of information. So and I've seen this in the chat as well, everyone really wants to make sure that they get this information in their inboxes. So as they have a chance to digest it, they can go back and look for phone numbers and names and things like that, because they have a lot of follow-up they want to do. I think we actually learned a lot about community land trust from Reverend Jo Ross. I think she's probably going to be putting on her own seminar shortly to teach everyone about how to do this. And I heard some of the other reporters talk about, engaging with the community. And I think that was a big piece of our conversation, not necessarily engaging the community, but education for the players, including the community. And as it relates to the land trust, Reverend Ross she's got a lot of education to do, because this is new to Michigan, or it's not new to Michigan, it's new to Detroit, but relatively new to Michigan. And for lenders, buyers, and the whole shebang. So communication and education are really important. Couple of things that also came up, just in terms of best practices. If there was some sort of like visual aid to go through to help people visualize the development process, I think that was suggested as something that would be really helpful. So something to supplement the questionnaire, I think that Brianna circulated. And another topic that actually came up, which I think is really important, because as we've been talking about all of the lenders, one of the things that I don't know that we spend a lot of time on was just the relationship, or the importance of relationship as you are working with lenders. And one of the challenges with that is the absence of financial institutions actually in some of our neighborhoods. So it was just another piece that I thought was very thoughtful and something for us to consider as leaders in this topic, to help, bring these pieces together.
Awesome.
So that's it for me.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you so much for that report out and that feedback. So that's it. It has been a extremely robust 2 days, and we definitely have a lot of follow-up for all of our participants. But I want to thank you all who stayed with us to the to the final stretch. I know it's been a long webinar, but it's been packed full of information, and I know that all of this information is going to be valuable moving forward towards your development project. So, Brianna, did you have any closing remarks?
I was just gonna say thank you to everybody who has come to the 2-day workshop series. I would say thank you for passing it along to your friends, passing it along to your church members, whoever, because this is helpful information, right? We want to help the communities that we serve. We want you guys to help the communities that you serve. And we want to make sure that people have access to resources, and not when it's too late, in the beginning, right? We want to make sure that people have the right step forward in their development process. I will say, if you guys have any questions or any last minute thoughts or ideas, please reach out to me, Mitzi, or Michael about anything. Please fill out the assessment and the questionnaire that we will be providing to you guys in a few days with the recordings. And then make sure you get that back to us by April 14th, okay? And then Michael, I think you're gonna take over again.
Yeah, so at this point, I would actually ask if Pastor Adams will come off mute and offer us a closing word of prayer. And then we will give you back 15 minutes to enjoy some of the weather. So Pastor Adams.
All right, thank you. I'm indeed honored to give this closing prayer. Let us pray. Father God, we thank you for this opportunity to come together in this collaborative spirit. We thank you for the American Heart Association. We thank you for Enterprise. And we thank you for all of the partners that have gathered together to share their time, their talents, and their knowledge. We appreciate you for that. And we appreciate them. We ask, Lord, that you would continue to bless us as we continue to model what a community should look like, not having preference towards poor or the rich, but that all might have an affordable place to live, that all might have a safe environment to live. We ask that as we depart this effort today, that you would continue to bless each and every faith-based organization, each and every community organization that strives to do the best work that they can. We ask that connections and that collaborations take place as a result of us coming together today. And finally, God, we ask that even in the midst of this pandemic, that you would continue to bless us, that you would heal any sickness among us. Continue, Lord God, to bless us as we come out of this season into a greater season of blessings and prosperity and of doing your will to be a blessing to our communities. We ask all of these blessings in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen, amen. Thank you, Pastor Adams, for that. And with that, you all are dismissed. Again, like Brianna mentioned, there will be a follow-up email with the recording as well as any other information concerning the assessment. So thank you all, and you're dismissed. Have a good afternoon.